Welcome back, Sebastian here. So time for my preview for the 2024 Formula 1 Spanish Grand Prix. So first, taking a look at last year's race. The race was won by Max Verstappen with the two Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell rounding out the podium. Some notable moments from that race. Norris made contact with Hamilton on the opening lap, got front wing damage, and was forced into a bit of a recovery drive. I believe that was also before the McLarens got their upgrade, so unfortunately a pretty tough race for them. Yuki Tsunoda got a 5-second penalty for forcing Zhou off track, and it was a really tough race for Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Qualifying was a disaster, I believe knocked out in Q1, said something like he was losing a second, he lost a second or so across his fastest lap in all of the right hand corners, and then was only able to recover up to 11. Now, looking at the circuit itself, the circuit Barcelona, Catalunya, been on the track for quite a long time, and unfortunately, we only have a couple more years left at this track, as this Grand Prix will almost certainly be replaced by the street race in Madrid. And there's some uncertainty about whether they might bring it back as like a European Grand Prix kind of thing, but realistically, we only have a couple more years here. Lots of high-speed corners. Overtaking is somewhat difficult, but with the removal of that hideous chicane that everyone hated, I think it's a little bit better. And you do have higher tire degradation, which is why we have the hardest set of tires in the Pirelli range. In terms of overtaking chances, turn 1 is your best option, but into turn 10 is also another option if you can get a good run from turn 9 and make a bold move down the inside of that corner. 4.657 kilometers in length. We should have 66 laps on Sunday. Lap record is a 1:16.330 set by Max Verstappen last year. For the schedule for this weekend, of course, we have the normal slate of Formula 2, Formula 3, that sort of thing as well. So for Formula 2 free practice, that's at 11:05 a.m. on Friday. FP1, 1:30 p.m. local time. Qualifying, 3:55 local time, and then for Formula 2, and then FP2 for Formula 1 is 5 p.m. local time. Moving on to Saturday, we have FP3, 12:30 p.m. local time, followed by the Formula 2 sprint race at 2:15, and qualifying for Formula 1 at 4 p.m. Then Sunday, Formula 2 feature race 10 a.m., and then the Grand Prix at 3 p.m. sharp. Like I mentioned earlier, tires for this weekend: soft C3, medium C2, and the hard C1. Just another thing, I've forgotten to put the weather up, but usually Spanish Grand Prix, usually quite dry, usually quite hot, so that's something that is taken into account as well. Now, before we finish up with predictions, talking about the best and worst drivers at this track in qualifying, looking at the best three in terms of head-to-head in qualifying, Russell leads with 80% over out-qualifying his teammate 80% of the time. Then we have Verstappen 78 and Hamilton third on 71. So interesting, you have both Mercedes there. Both Mercedes were on the podium last year. In terms of the gaps, average gaps for Russell, it's about 4/10 of a second. For Verstappen, about 3/10, and then for Hamilton, about half a tenth on average. Now, looking at the worst drivers, not a surprise to see Lance Stroll on the board, 29%. He hasn't been on average out-qualified here by 1.3 of a second. Then you have Tsunoda 33%, 1.8 of a second. And then Norris, only 40%, bit of a surprise, but has on when you look at the average, has on average out-qualified his teammate by about 1/10 of a second. So a couple times that he has out-qualified a teammate, it's been by very, very big margins, and when he's been out-qualified, it's been by very small margins. So finishing up with a look at some predictions, I think this is a track that I think should suit the Red Bull. It's kind of an all-around circuit with some medium-ish length straights. So I think I'm going to go with a Max Verstappen win. Rounding out the podium, I think it's for this race, it should be a pretty easy choice. A lot of high-speed corners. I think it will really suit the McLaren. So I'm going to predict a Norris, Piastri 2-3 rounding out the podium. Of course, this time last year, it was before their upgrades. Of course, they were quite rubbish at this time last year, but this year with their upgrades, we know what their cars, the characteristics of their cars is. So I do think they'll be quite strong at this track. Anyway, looking forward to this weekend. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.